Okay, we are recording. This is Mishlei chapter 10, pasuk 30. Sadiq le'olam bal yemot reshaim lo yishkenu aretz. And I feel like the one difficult word I put there just in case you need it. Who wants to have our initial translation attempt here? Just jump right in. We have Mayan back in action. Not putting the spot Mayan, but
Sure, I'll go for it.
okay, go for it.
A righteous person is forever. Not sure what to do with Baal.
Okay, bal is like bal tosif or bal tashchis.
Okay, so someone who shakes or totters or slips.
So bal is not, right? So to not. So it's a lesson of negative. It can mean no, it can mean not, it can mean don't. We can keep it vague for now. Yeah.
And evil people, reshaim, will not dwell in the land.
Yep. And wicked people will not dwell in the land. Okay. So can we make this better English than a righteous person is forever not shake?
I guess like a righteous person like will always not shake.
Okay, will always not shake. Okay, now this is the interesting thing here, and this is an intentional ambiguity, I think, unless it's just bad Hebrew for me to say this otherwise. One way to read it is for tzaddik la'olam bal yemot is a righteous person will always not shake. Okay, which would seem to imply that like there is never any shaking or tottering or slipping, right? What would be the other way to translate the word, not to translate, but to with the syntax of tzaddik la'olam bal yemot, if anyone sees what I'm hinting at here?
Not waver.
Okay, not waver. Yeah, waver is good. Waver is a good translation. But what about in terms? So you don't need to know Hebrew for this, but you can mess around with the order of the words here. Tzaddik la'olam bal yemot.
Someone who's always a tzaddik.
Oh, okay, that's quite a possibility also. Tzaddik la'olam bal yemot. That's it. Okay, I'm gonna put that there, even though I don't know if you could read it that way. One who is always a tzaddik will not shake, totter, slip. Okay. But there's another reading.
Yeah, I guess like a righteous person will not like shake always.
Yes,
I
that's
don't
the other
know
way.
how different that is, but
Yeah, no, okay, right. So a tzaddik will not shake, totter, slip, and let's use forever, okay, which is I think a better way than saying always. Just that we could use both of them. Yeah, a tzaddik will not shake, totter, slip forever. So what does that imply? Like, what is the difference between those first two readings?
I guess like the first reading is like they'll never like take a hit backwards, and the second reading is like they will have like tough times or whatever and be shooken up, but they'll get over it.
Exactly. Okay, so that is a big split here, right? So according to the first reading, the tzaddik will never slip, shake, totter, waver, whatever it is. According to the second one, he will, but it won't last forever. Okay, and I'm including this in the translation portion because these are just two ways to read the pasuk. Okay, all right. Let's look at the Mitzudos here. Mitzudos ציון says yimot means lashon netia, so that's also different. It means to turn. Okay, to turn, and I feel like that has a different meaning also. Okay, fine. And then yishkenu is inyan chanaya bahashgate. Okay, so actually, I'm going to write these two here. Hold on, just so we can get this here. Mitzudos Tzaddik says yimot equals turn, and then he says yishkenu is to dwell tranquilly. Okay, or in peace. So that's different than we have. But we just said will not dwell in the land, and he's adding a connotation to it. Okay. And then the Targum Ksuvim doesn't do that much different. He says Tzaddik la'olam lo nezua, so that's just a straight translation. V'rashia lo yizva'adun ba'ara. So the word that you may know is va'ad, like the va'ad of rabbis. What does a va'ad mean? Anyone know? Va'ad means to congregate or to gather. Okay, will not gather. I'll say congregate in the land. Okay, so he's in other words, yishkenu means to dwell, but the question is, what's the connotation? Does it mean dwell peacefully? Does it mean dwell together? Does it mean something else? Okay, so that's that there. Sounds like a car alarm. Can you hear that or not? Zoom is pretty good at filtering. Okay, our scroll says a righteous one will never falter, but the wicked will not dwell tranquilly in the land. So they get it from Matsudas David. All right, so that's fine. Living Knox says a righteous man. Oh, I always do this. Hold on. I have to save this as analysis notes before I delete all the translations here. Analysis notes. Okay. Wait. Yeah. Living Knox says the righteous man will not founder forever. Okay, founder meaning like to wobble, and the wicked will not inhabit the earth. All right. And Alter says the righteous man never stumbles, but the wicked will not dwell on the earth. Okay. So pretty straightforward for translation wise. I mean, I know we have this ambiguity here, but no unpleasant puzzles that we often have. Okay, so what are the questions?
I think pretty clearly, what does it mean to dwell?
Yeah. What does it mean to dwell? What is the connotation, if any?
I guess also, what's the definition of Sadiq here?
Yes, good. So let's do both of them. What is the definition? What are the definitions? Definitions of Sadiq and Rasha in this context. Yeah.
As far as dwelling goes, there's some indication of permanence as opposed to something temporary.
Okay. So what is the connotation of shocking, if any? So I'm just going to add a couple things. So permanence, tranquility. What did we say the other one? Oh, congregation. Yeah. Something else.
Why is it spoken in negatives, meaning not shaking and not dwelling?
Oh, okay. That's a good sensitivity to the language one. So why does the pasuk express this in negatives? Right? You would expect it to say the tzaddik will be established or something like that, you know? Yeah.
Also, are we treating this as opposites, or like if we are, then how are they?
Yeah.
And if
Okay, good. So let's just do it in the normal way. We have the broadest question. What is the relationship between the two halves? Are they opposites? And if so, how? Yeah, they seem to be opposites, right? But not really. I mean, in those structurally they seem to be opposites, but not faltering seems to be different than dwelling. You know, like if I said what's the opposite of dwelling, you would not say faltering. You know, you would say like not living, not dwelling. You know, and if I said what's the opposite of faltering, you know, then you might say, you know, permanently established or something like that. But I don't know if you would say living, like living in the land. That's, you know.
wait, so question on that, you might want to
Yeah.
like wait when we actually do approaches,
Yeah.
then just not force, but should we be more inclined for our interpretation to understand like the tzaddiks have as something to do with like living in a specific like community or place?
Okay, so that's a good question, and let's ask that question as follows. Hold on. So we had the question, what is shachain? But let's say what is dwell? What does dwell in the land mean? What does dwell in the land mean? And I'll put the emphasis on in the land. Okay, like as opposed to where? Okay. Similarly, and this is where I'm going to bring your question in, Rifki. I think this is your question. Similarly, do we insert, or sorry, how, if at all, do we incorporate land into the first half of the pasuk? I'm trying to ask it in an open-ended way, but is that what you were sensing, Rifki? Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, meaning like Tzadiq Lil and Bal Yimot sounds like he's just not going to trip. You know, sounds like if I said draw the first half of this pasuk like on a whiteboard, you would just draw the tzaddik like in motion and like it's all smooth and stuff, he's just going forward smoothly. But then when you have the second one, oh, so now there's like a backdrop and like land and like settlements and stuff, so like what was that in the first half? Did we just not know about it? Like first half is like walking style, or something like that, and the second half is where you're living, yeah. Okay, what else?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Ooh,
One,
okay.
thank you. One, what does Leola mean?
Okay, good. All right, so let's do, hold on just a second here. What does forever mean in this context? And what is the syntax? That's just my way of nodding to the question of how to translate it. Is it a tzaddik will never falter, or a tzaddik will not falter forever?
Right. Oh yeah, that brings me to my next question. And what does it mean that a tzaddik will not falter, like ever?
Yeah.
Like,
okay, fine. Yeah, you're right. I'll list this separately. Okay. What does it mean that a tzaddik will not falter forever / never falter? Yeah. And
yeah, and it seems like it's not true too.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Seems false. Yeah. In fact, like if you look at, I don't know, like I think we could all agree that like name a tzaddik who's faltered. I mean, I guess it depends on what we say. What we say. Well, let's ask that question also. Right? What does faltering mean?
Isn't there a pasuk in Koheles maybe that says you don't?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's a pasuk in Koheles that says you don't live in this world without any hate.
Right. Yeah. So yeah.
Open
Hold on a
pasuk.
second. Yeah. So what does yimot falter mean? Yeah. Okay. Right. So in other words, yeah. You know what? Let's have that as a separate question. Okay, because it seems like we need to. Seems false. So Koheles says that it's impossible for a person to be a total tzaddik, and to not sin. Right now, if you again, obviously, this is kind of assuming that sinning is an example of faltering. And this is, I think, kind of why I acted surprised when someone suggested this reading, because like a forever tzaddik, or someone who's a tzaddik forever, I just don't think such a thing exists, but still is a possible reading. Yeah. Sin, make a mistake, right? I mean, something else. Okay. What else?
Is the land like talking about generic land or specific land, meaning Israel?
Yeah. Okay, so let's just add that into question number 7. Okay. What land is it even talking about? Right? Generic, specific. Yeah.
And also for the second half of the pasuk, like who cares, really?
Who cares?
Meaning like who cares if the reshaim will dwell in the land or not? Like, what is that?
Says the guy who this morning was suggesting that we just kill all the reshaim.
I'm just saying it's an easy fix. I don't know.
Wait, when you say who cares, yeah, okay, that's a good. I know what you mean by who cares, right?
Right.
Regarding the second half, I just wanted to have a dig at you from this morning. Regarding the second half, who cares, right? So what? So what that the wicked won't dwell in the land? Yeah, and again, I think again, just to acknowledge like where the reaction is coming from, like obviously we don't want reshaim dwelling in our land, but the question is like, do we care because like therefore you won't become a Russia? Do we care because you'll be protected from, which I guess is another question which we always ask, but here, and I think I know the answer already before we ask it, because it's been the same answer for all the other pasukim, but who is the audience of this pasuk? And when I say it's been the same answer for all the pasukim, the last like a bajillion pasukim that we've done in this perek have been aimed at people who are not tzadikim and reshaim, because tzadikim don't need this and reshaim won't listen to this, but it's people who are basically at our stage of development. I'm assuming that we're all included in this category, and we are like, on the one hand, we recognize the benefit of the tzaddik's lifestyle and are drawn to that. But on the other hand, like there's some perks of being a Russia, and like we're attracted to that. And we are on the fence. And so the audience has usually been, us, and then he's telling us why it's not worth it to be a Russia. But I'm asking it anyway in case we find something different, because you should always ask every question, no matter what. Okay, are we good? I feel like that's going to be our major
The
question.
other classic is like if it meaning like the other part of who the audience is like what action can we take based off of this information?
Yeah, right. So what's the practical implication? Yeah, I'll add that there. What is the practical implication of this pasuk? Right, beyond like don't be a tzaddik and don't be a Russia and you should be a Sadiq. I'm gonna eliminate this translation just because I didn't see anyone who translates it that way. But even though I'm acknowledging the creativity of the translation.
I was wondering that for every
Yeah.
tzaddik to be someone who passes away as a tzaddik. So then
okay, translation's back because someone says something that might be responding to that in one of the Mefarshim. Okay, there you go. I take it back. Okay, we're still going to focus on the first two, but yeah, if your mind goes to the other one, then go for it. Okay, so now let's do what is our custom, which is to take a minute to think, after which we will hear people who have half-baked ideas or answers to specific questions. We'll hold off on people who think they can explain the whole pasuk. Yeah, okay, so let's think. Okay, so we'll take half-baked ideas or partial answers. And just a reminder, courtesy reminder of protocol here is I don't read chat during Zoom things, and I also don't, I can't see everyone. So just like interrupt or use the hand raise feature. Okay, go ahead. Who wants to start?
So I have a very half-baked idea. It's
Sure.
very place. So I was thinking that I feel like this is probably speaking about like values, and I'm going with like the second translation, like just to be clear.
Okay.
I was thinking that with the wicked not dwelling in the land, that I feel like that's alluding to some sense of like instability. And I'm applying that also to the Sadiq. So I'm assuming that because the Russia has instability, and I'm also applying that to his values, that it's not just instability in the land, which is what it says in the pasuk, but it's also like instability in his values and his fundamentals. So clearly there's something missing there. And then for the Tzaddik, he does have all of that. And it even says, oh, you might think like, oh, if you have some instabilities in some areas of your life, that like you're automatically on like the Russia side, or that you're not like a righteous person. But it's coming to tell us that that's actually not true, and that you might think that, but really you are a person, you are a human. Like I think like Ariel said about like Koheles, that you can sin essentially and still like be considered a righteous person. I'm not sure like, what Sadiq actually means, but
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let me just do one thing. I'm going to modify one of our questions here. So for number 5, what are the definitions of Sadiq and Russia in this context? Or what aspect of Sadiq and Russia is this talking about? The reason why I'm modifying that is because again, this is methodology that we talked about before, but it's good to review. Like, not every pasuk in Mishlei that has a Mishlei jargon is out to define the pasuk, and not even everyone is relying on a definition. So the example I give is there are a lot of pasukim about laziness and the atzel and the lazy person. And I remember one time when I was learning through those pasukim with Rabbi Moskowitz, excuse me, then we did this is not when we were doing our whole laziness adventure, but there's a pasuk that says the lazy person says there's a lion outside, like a lion roaming in the streets, or I'll be mauled in the streets, and I remember asking the question, what's the definition of a lazy person? And I was just operating based on this notion that you have to define every term in Mishlei. And what he ended up saying was that the pasuk is not even about laziness per se. The pasuk was about excuse making. And it turns out that we didn't need to define the lazy person. It was only using the lazy person as an example of someone who makes excuses, So too here, like, let's take, again, Rifki, I might ask you to repeat part of your comment because this part my mind was fixated on. Rifki was saying basically that this is talking about, like, for lack of a better term, like how you lose your Sadiq card, and it's not like they rip up your Sadiq card if you like falter once, and it's possible. Obviously it's possible we might need to define Sadiq in order to understand that, but it's also possible that the pasuk is just talking about making mistakes, and it's using an example of a Sadiq to show that like making one mistake is not going to change your whole identity, So I think that's a good way to say it. Now, before I go, I said Ariel's raising his hand, but just Rifki, tell me again. Let me try summarizing what I got from what you were saying. I admit I was distracted by that first part of what you were saying. That the pasuk is basically coming to tell you, don't think that the Sadiq who falters is automatically out of the Sadiq club or into the club of the Russia, but you could still be a Sadiq. And even though you made mistakes, and I didn't. So is that accurate for what you were saying for the first half?
Yeah, but then I also was talking about like the dwelling in the land aspect, and I was taking that to like values and how I do think that there is some like semblance of when you have like strong foundations and values, I think that you're much more likely to like live in one place and affect that place that you're living in.
Okay.
Where you don't, then obviously the opposite would happen.
Okay, good. So I like this half-baked idea because it's two half-baked ideas. Okay, like I think for each half is good, and then now the question would be, can we unify them in some way? Okay, so that's a good observation. Yeah. Okay, Ariel.
Yeah, I was actually thinking along the lines of like what Rifki was saying. I think one of the half-baked ideas, it had to do with like stability.
Yeah.
Like almost like what it means to dwell in the land is like you're settling down. You have like a location where you feel stable in. It's like it's almost like conveying a certain midah.
Yeah.
And maybe you could say that a tzaddik in this specific pasuk is talking about an individual who has that midah of like he's almost like very secure in his position, and through his knowledge and through his calculations, he knows that this is the best path to take.
Yeah.
And therefore it'll be almost impossible to make him falter in that specific instance or area.
Yeah.
So
Okay, good.
that's like being stable in the land, to answer Rifki's question before.
Yeah. So that's actually where I thought Rifki was going when she started off with saying it's about values. Is I thought that she was going to say that the reshaim, because of their values or lack thereof, then they're not stable. Whereas the tzaddik has stable values, and that's the cause of him not faltering. In fact, we didn't ask one question here. I'll call you in a second, Penina. But what does it mean the tzaddik will not falter forever? I guess this should be another question. Oh, question here. In number 4, what does falter mean? Sin, make a mistake, something else. Also, what causes him to falter? And that would only be according to question number 2. Or sorry, translation number 2. Okay, like what would cause him to falter? One just thing, by the way, you'll notice I changed the word forever not to never, because I realized, we have a word in English for forever not. It's called never, and it's much shorter. So that's why I just modified that. Okay, Penina? So Ariel, I like your book, by the way. Yeah.
My half-baked idea is like completely different, but when I saw olam on one side and eretz on the other, I immediately went to like physical and non-physical.
Yeah.
And so like you can't falter, like a tzaddik can't falter in the same way someone who's like drawn to eretz can't dwell as a punishment or like a consequence.
I see. So is that going to result in a different reading of Le'olam? Like I see the association from the word la'olam, but would you read the pasuk in a specific way?
Well, like the olam means forever, and so
Right.
that means, I assume, after the physical life as well. So so forever, if you're like focused, I don't know, if you're worried about consequences when it comes to a non-physical thing, like you won't falter in that. I'm not exactly sure what I'm trying to say with that.
Okay, I just was trying to get where at what point the bread is baked and it gets into the half baked section. Okay, so I think
it's in both.
The baked part is you're highlighting the eternity being things that are not of this world, and eretz being things that are like earthly or physical. The less baked part is how to read the pasuk in that way. But I hear what you're saying. By the way, just to, we will, just knowing our approach to Mishlei, we will likely not take this into Olam Haba territory. But, and I'm not saying that your approach has to go that way, but I do want to point out that a lot of the Mefarshim on this pasuk do take this to be about Olam Haba, so that's just something to keep in mind, that there are people who are like responding to the same thing in the pasuk as you are. Yeah, Mayan?
Yeah, I actually have like what I was thinking is a little bit of a support for both ideas, for Nina and for Ariel and Rifki type thing, which is where like Aretz, we automatically translated it as the land because just have it like well in the land.
Yeah.
And like, not that I think like it's a bad thing per se. I just think that it just made me think, maybe it's because the parsha from like 2 weeks ago, but it just made me think of like Cain and Havel and like dwelling in the land and not versus like being a wanderer. And I think that like that ties into it a lot in terms of like when you have like a punishment and you're trying to like fix a mindset thing. So Aretz, like tying into the worldly things, because the Russian needs to fix his mindset as opposed to the Sadiq who has the right mindset, but like maybe for some reason he wasn't strong enough at that point, or whatever, for whatever reason he made a mistake and he faltered at that point. Somebody has to fix a mindset, like in the case of like Cain and Aretz and worldly, whatever.
Okay. So I
it's not a full idea. It was more
sort
of like it's definitely not an idea.
Yeah. So the most solid thing I got out of that, and again, I'm just not sure if I'm getting all the pieces here, is the lo yishkenu aretz being associated with reshaim. That's like, in other words, in general. No, I missed it. Can you say the upshot? I got your reference to Cain and Havel. Yeah, I somehow I missed the main point.
That's fine, because I think I did too. But
okay.
I was just thinking that like in terms of the mindset versus a mistake, like I think that those are the two distinguishing factors that like we could take, like an approach we could take, and that would support what Ariel was kind of saying, and a little bit what Rifki was saying,
right? And
being that like the general world, whatever path that someone who's a Russia would take, and we need to fix that mindset versus someone who has like the proper mindset, a Sadiq who just made a mistake in that time.
I see. Right. Okay. So depending on what your mindset is, then that's going to affect what route you have when you make a mistake. And so that's because of the Tzadik's mindset, then he's not going to fault when he makes a mistake, then that's not going to cause him to falter. Or when he falters, he's going to have he's not going to have the consequence of lo yishkenu aretz.
I don't know if you can call it a mistake for what the Russia does, because I think that's just his general, like, those are his actions.
Yeah, I hear. Okay, noted. Yeah, Oren?
Yeah, I don't really have a full idea at all. Just something I would like to note is that it doesn't say the aretz. It just says aretz.
Right, yeah.
So it's not the land, it's just land. So definitely that side of the pasuk is more just you could understand it to be more about just about reshaim are not in land, meaning they're not in the physical at all. I don't know what that means, but it's kind of what it is. It's something to know. It's something to know.
Yeah. I also noticed that. And I was like considering like made up words like, or, nonsense, things like that. It is weird that it doesn't say ba'aretz, Now I think plain pshat is it does mean in the land, but you're right, is it doesn't say in the land, and that does kind of suggest something like what Mayan and Penina were alluding to, like, he dwells like in an earthly type way or something like that. Yeah, Sean?
Yeah, we've been using the word falter, which for me has like the connotation of like there is a trip, right? And then it's moving back from the trip.
Right.
Could we instead say that like he's thrown like kind of like self-correcting, meaning it's not going fully into the, like, it's kind of merging between 1 and 2, where it's not like he's not moving at all, right? But the amount he moves is like not enough to throw him off balance. Right.
Right. So that's kind of, I was thinking, is that maybe what the Matsuda ציון says when he translates emote as to turn, meaning that there is something going on, but it's not gonna throw him off course.
Yeah.
Like he won't be derailed, might be the best English word for that, or thrown off course. I mean, both of those vehicle metaphors.
Yeah, because Falter for me seems like we're talking more in like he's actually like done like a quantifiable like move off of track and then moving back.
Yeah.
Versus more of like a shift, like a leaning and then like autocorrects kind of.
Okay, I hear. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess which of these two translations did you say you were more inclined to?
It's kind of merging between the two.
Yeah, right. Because the problem is, because the question is, does he emote or does he not emote? So if he emotes, then you have to be reading it as the pasuk is saying, yeah, but it won't be forever. And if it's just saying he will never emote, then you don't get any movement at all. I mean, you don't get any like tripping or anything like that at all. That's why I'm like trying to figure out how, like, it feels like you have to select one, like either he's tripping, but it's not forever. Sorry, either he's emoting, but it's not forever, or he is, or he's not emoting. And I hear what you're trying to say. Can you read that into the puzzle? Like you're trying to say that he does emote, but then something about it makes it not forever.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to read into the ambiguity because I don't like. I feel like it could have been phrased better to not have this ambiguity, and therefore that's the move I'm making because of that.
Okay, that's a legitimate Shlomo HaMelech move of like intentional ambiguity to make your mind think along both lines. I hear that. Okay. And I think that's a good description of a tzaddik that is kind of in line with the way Rivki was talking about of what does happen when the tzaddik makes a mistake and why, whatever happens is it doesn't undermine his tzaddikness, so that's something to think about to develop that idea. Penina?
Based on what we just said, I got a different idea that kind of like builds on both of them.
Yeah.
So volume means that they won't shake, totter, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if a tzaddik is la'olam, right? So if he's for like the non-physical, when he does fail, because I'm assuming that's what's the pasuk is talking about, then like he won't like turn completely.
Right.
Like he can rebound.
Right.
But someone who's focused on the physical, when something bad happens, they can never dwell in the land. Like they can never.
Okay.
Like, do you understand?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So let me just state the idea on its own, not looking at the pasuk, and then we'll get back to the pasuk in a second. Let me think of an idea. Hold on just a second. So you're saying that if you're oriented towards something that is beyond the physical, let's say like learning or development or whatever you want to say, then that's going to cause it so that when you do slip up, then it's not. See, again, I'm running into the same problem with your reading as with Sean's, is you're trying to use the olam as part of the description of the tzaddik, right? So then I think you're forced to read the second half of the pasuk to say he will not falter. Now you can do Sean's ambiguity move, but I think
it's not even ambiguous. It's saying that you won't turn, right?
You won't turn. You won't turn, right? So you're using them to Tzion's, right? He won't turn. Right. Okay, right. But where does it say then that he? So according to you, it does not imply any sort of mistake or faltering, right?
I mean, I think it's implied from the second half and also kind of from what we were talking about, but I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, I think that's the difficulty, because if you take the stumble, falter, teeter thing out of the first half, then the second half is just very general, like they just won't dwell in the land. And that's really false, like that is definitely false that they, well, not definitely false, but I'm saying like it's much harder to say that they just won't dwell in the land. Whereas if you take it the way that we're reading it, especially with number 2, that the subject of the pasuk is what happens when a tzaddik falters and a rasha falters. Well, the tzaddik will falter, but it won't be forever. Whereas the reshaim, as a result of this, will not end up dwelling in the land, something like that.
Okay, so then maybe it's not about that. And it's if you're focused on the olam forever, you won't turn.
Yeah.
And then the second half is saying that if you're Russia, you won't dwell in the land, like you won't even be able to dwell in the land. Like it's telling us something about the Russia. Like if you're so focused on that, you won't even be able to like live with reality.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm definitely more comfortable with that approach than the first approach. Something about that first half bothers me though. Sadiq Olam. I just don't like that reading of the Sadiq is for non-physical things, because Sadiq Olam is either a time word of like, yeah, I don't know. Something about that reading feels forced to me, but not the idea. The idea is fine, but yeah. Okay. Does anyone have a full baked idea?
Shameless.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm trying to say something differently with this new half-baked idea, but I don't know if I can fully express it. Maybe you can help look for the difference between the first idea I had. Yeah. But can you maybe say that the second half of the pasuk doesn't literally mean, like the Russia is gonna settle on the land.
Yeah.
Maybe it just means that the nature of the Russia just practically won't have the capability of settling in the land, because through his because the definition of Russia is someone who's always against the system and wants to undermine the system and just work against them in the long term.
Right.
It's just not, it just doesn't apply. I don't know if it's different than what I was saying before.
Yeah.
But
I think it feels different. It feels different. It feels much more fundamental.
But I don't know why it would be different though. I feel like I don't know.
Okay, so I saw one of the Mefarshim here. Anyone else want to say a full baked idea, or if not, we'll start going to Mefarshim, because I also am not. I don't have a set understanding of this pasuk yet. So we're going to be figuring this out together. If you're waiting for the big reveal, then don't get your hopes up. I have approaches. Okay, so let's just do one thing. Let's just take. Oh yeah, Avi.
Yeah, I guess the thing I'm kind of struggling with is that the two halves seem quite unrelated.
Yes.
And so this might be a little bit of a stretch, but I'm thinking could saying that the reshaim will not dwell in the land have something to do with like having an influence in the land?
Oh, that's interesting. Definitely, it could be. I mean, it's funny. The funny thing is that when we talk about the Shekhinah, and we use the verb shachin for God, according to the Rambam, what that means is obviously God is not in a place, but what we mean when we say God's Shekhinah or God dwells is He influences that place. I just don't. I only think of that in relation to God, but I suppose. I mean, it's not unreasonable to say that about people also, is that if you're a guest, then you just are passing through, but if you establish yourself, then you're gonna have an influence over the land.
Sure.
So now, are you saying that solves the problem of how the two halves go together?
At least somewhat.
Yeah, so how does that change the first half? Because I like it for the second half.
I guess, yeah, so it's not fully uniting them, but I guess it just seems more related, like the Sadiq not faltering, I guess, because he won't feel the influence of reshaim that are dwelling in the same area.
So that's a way that we haven't taken before, because we've been kind of viewing it as the Sadiq does this and the reshaim, the Sadiq does not do this and the reshaim don't do that. But you're saying that they're all in the same scenario, like in the same land, then the reshaim will not have an influence, because of the Tzadiq is someone who will not budge, basically, then the reshaim will not have an influence on the Tzadiq. That's a different way of reading the pasuk than we've seen. That has potential. Yeah. So it's describing the interaction. Yeah, Zach? Are you going to save us, Zach?
I might have an attempt at a full idea.
Go for it.
So I think it starts for me with what land is, why is that relevant? For me, that seems like a big part of the focus here.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that land might represent a certain type of relationship with God, in the sense that there's a very evident dependency on God when it comes to dealing with land, meaning like the produce of the land is, and rain and all that is like much more clear, the relationship and dependency on God.
Yeah.
And so in as far as that relationship works, the wicked people won't have that relationship. They won't have a relationship where they depend on God, and they won't be treated as such. In contrast, a tzaddik will. And so if you look at those two things, there's two things that result from that. A tzaddik who's going to be depending on God, and it kind of reminds me of, I think, how maybe you could help me. There's like maybe how the Ramban discusses hashgacha in and outside of Eretz Yisrael, and like how tzadikim get certain kinds of treatment outside of Eretz Yisrael, but Jews in general. There's like a framework for how hashgacha works. And so like if a tzaddik is tapping into some of that hashgacha as far as how they're living their life, then it comes with like a lack of falling or slipping, and even you can call that in a physical sense, or however, whether you want to call that physical or metaphysical, there's some sort of preventative measure for a tzaddik because of that relationship he has. And for a wicked person who never taps into that relationship, it is inevitable, meaning like maybe in a certain moment he's not slipping or falling, but that's not the same kind of forever protection that someone who really has that relationship has, meaning a wicked person might succeed in the temporary sphere, but it will inevitably ultimately slip for him, unlike the tzaddik.
Yeah. Okay. So the approach you're taking is very similar to the Rav Boggs approach, who makes this about hashgacha, and because of the difficulty of the Rav Boggs approach, I want to actually take up Ariel's way first. Then I want to take up my approach, and then we'll do the Rav Bogg. And it's very possible that these are all the same idea. Okay, these are just like pieces of the puzzle. Okay, so hold that thought. My objection, by the way, I mean, I can still object, even though the Rav Bogg would not object, is I would rather not make this about hashgacha based on this pasuk, because it doesn't really talk about God intervening. Now, here's the thing, though. You could say, and there are Mefarshim who say this, that this is a continuation of the previous pasuk, which the previous pasuk was, what was the previous pasuk? Hold on. I gotta move this out of the way. Previous pasuk was.
So I have an answer even without the previous pasuk.
Okay, let me just read the previous. Ma'uz latom derech Hashem u'mechita l'fo elei avin. That a stronghold or for the derech Hashem is a stronghold for the blemish-free person, and destruction to the doers of iniquity. That does talk about the derech Hashem at least, and we did talk about how derech Hashem could be God's actions. So if you want to join to the previous one, I'd be much more open to the to that reading. I just on its own I wouldn't say it. You said you could save it on its own.
Well, yeah. At least the thought that occurs to me is that like this kind of hashgacha is not like an overt godly interference. Meaning like this isn't necessarily the kind of pasuk where you would want to explicitly say like God is doing X, whereas Aretz is a more subtle, like through the laws of nature form of hashgacha, meaning the kind of hashgacha that he's talking about reflects the words he's using.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So now, when you put it that way, let's actually Zach. We're gonna jump the line with Zach for 1 second. Okay, I want to go back into Ariel's, but my mind is on this right now. So this reminds me of one of my favorite Ram. No, I can't say it's one of my favorite Rams in Hill's Tשובה. That's like all of them. Hold on. One of those underrated Rams in Hill's Tשובה. Okay, and I quote this a lot, so maybe this is not so underrated for you anymore. But check this out. Okay, so this is in Ramam Hill's Tשובה, perek Vav. And so perek Hey is about free will. Okay, and about showing what free will is, and that you need it for Torah and it's fundamental. Perek Vav is about the pasukim that seem to go against free will in the Torah, and the Rambam basically like mentions them and then like explains them in a way that they don't contradict free will. So, excuse me. So then he says like this. One of the questions that he brings up is he says, Umahu zesh amar David, Tov yashar Hashem, alkin yorech atayim badarach, yadrich anavim b'mishpat, v'lamed anavim darko. What is this that David said when he said, good and upright is Hashem, therefore he instructs sinners on the path, he guides the humble in judgment, and he teaches the humble his way. So the problem, and I wouldn't have seen this as a contradiction to free will, but he's saying basically it indicates that God is instructing and guiding sinners, and that seems to be, he's saying that seems to be a violation of free will. Okay, again, I don't think the question is so strong. Must mean I'm missing something, but the answer is what I like. So how does God guide sinners without interfering in their free will? Two ways. Number one is God sends prophets who inform them, teach them about the ways of Hashem and return them to the good. Okay, so that's how God helps sinners. Okay, not by coming out of Shemayim and like physically like guiding them, but by giving them knowledge through Nevi'im. But here's the one that reminded me of what Zach is saying. The Ode, furthermore, Shenasan bahem koach lilmod ulahavin, that God implanted in them, meaning in sinners, the capacity to learn and to understand. Shemidazo b'chol adam. This tendency is in all people, not just sinners. Shekol zman shu nimshach b'darchei hachachma v'tzedek. All the time, as long as a person is drawn after, or the more a person is drawn after the ways of wisdom and righteousness, misave lehen v'rodef osan. He desires them, craves them, and he chases them. And that's what Chazal meant when they said, Bala Tahir Messianoso, that one who comes to be purified is assisted. Kolomar, meaning to say, Yimsa Atmo Nezer al Hadavar, he finds himself assisted on the matter. So I remember the day, but I remember the feeling when I first read this Rambam, because I don't know how many times you've encountered this statement of Habala Tahir Messianoso, but it's quoted a lot. One who comes to purify himself will be assisted, and the way it's usually quoted is like you get hashgachic assistance. God assists you and makes things work out in your favor. The way the Rambam is saying it is, it's true, God assists you and makes things work out in your favor, but how? Because he implanted within every person the desire to learn and understand, and that the more you involve yourself in chachma and tzedek, the more you're drawn towards it, and you find a natural momentum. So what Zach is saying, let's go back to the pasuk now and see if I'm projecting into the pasuk, or if this is in line with what Zach is saying, or maybe I'm projecting onto Zach. So Tzaddik L'Olam Bal Yimot is God's assistance of the tzaddik, but it's not through intervention in the laws of nature, which the pasuk wouldn't, the pasuk is not really saying. It's saying that because the tzaddik has cultivated his attachment to chachma and tzedek, so then, and maybe this is kind of what Sean was saying also, or related to what Sean was saying. So then when he gets off track, then he's going to course correct very quickly, because that attraction to chachma and tzedek is still there. Now, that doesn't mean he can't go bad. It means that it takes a lot more to throw him completely off track than it does with the Russia. But with the Russia, he is in the opposite scenario, which is, and this is where I'm losing it. So Zach, let me pause here for 1 second. Does this have anything to do with the way that you are inclined to read the first half of the pasuk, or am I just totally missing your point?
Yeah, I think we might be on different tracks.
Okay, fine. So then say what you said about the second half again, and maybe I'll try to complete this thought for the first half, and then you can tell me where I'm.
Yeah, I mean, I find your thought intriguing. I don't have your thought fully either yet, but
okay.
What I was what I was saying was that there is a type of hashgacha, meaning like within hashgacha there can be different layers, let's say.
Yeah.
And the most basic one is the most invisible one, and that's just through laws of nature, meaning
right
how much rain there is in a year, for example. Right. And for example, I think in Eretz Yisrael, I think it's like clearly like a hashgachic phenomenon, how much rain there is in a year and how much produce there is. So a person who is a Russia will never tap into that. They'll never tap into that type of hashgacha, whereas a tzaddik will tap into that type of hashgacha. Even if we're talking about the lowest level of hashgacha, but they're tapping into that, and because they're tapping into that, they'll always have they'll always be that whatever degree of hashgacha that is, that'll always be there for them. And whereas for the Russia, they might accidentally get a lot of rain and a lot of produce. And so it might look at surface value. And that's why the forever is important, because for Russia, it might look seemingly successful, but at some point it will run out, because those are the laws of nature. It ebbs and flows. Whereas for the tzaddik, the nature of that is different. They're tapping into something that's more stable.
And you're learning not dwell in the land in what sense?
That they won't dwell in this hashgachic system of through the laws of nature. Meaning, let me clarify that through the laws of nature, the laws of nature being, I'm using Eretz Yisrael as an example of what that level of hashgacha is that within Eretz Yisrael, the laws of nature play a role in hashgacha, and as far as how much rain or produce there is. And so in general, that exists if you're a tzaddik. And if you're not a tzaddik, then it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, then that means your success isn't a forever success.
Isn't a forever thing, Yeah, okay. I definitely see now how you're saying a completely different idea than I am. I hear your idea. I don't know. Again, you're in good company with Ralbag, because he says this is about hashgacha. I'm just not inclined to read it that way. But again, I want to see, maybe when we read the Ralbag, then that'll trigger a further development of your idea. All right, so now let's go to Ariel's idea. Okay, sorry, this is kind of scattered.
Also, can we tack on your idea to the list as well? Because I'd like also.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Can I actually add on to what I was saying as well?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I figured out a way to incorporate what I just recently said, and I know how to. I now know the relationship, meaning. The first half of the second half of the pasuk is talking about, I don't want to translate like an individual Russia making an impact on the world, but I want to take the Rishak system that you apply into into the world, meaning a system that's based off of Russia's, that it will just not sustain itself, and in that instance, it will not, be capable of dwelling in the land. Okay, great. Now, the first half of the pasuk, you can take the tzaddik system and place it into the world, and that will sustain itself, and furthermore, it will be difficult to topple it down. So it's really using the system of each one, and incorporating into the land. So I guess now I am translating it literally.
Okay, so let me show you the commentary that I wanted to show you, because I think it fits in really well with the approach you're taking, and then we can develop it more. So this is Rav Yosef Kmachhi, that's the Radak and Rav Moshe Kmachhi's father. Tzaddik le'olam ba'imot ki hu yesod ha'olam, because he is the foundation of the world. Reshaim behefech, and the wicked are the opposite. Very, very small commentary here, okay? But the tzaddik is the foundation of the world. Now, can we understand what that means? I know it's said, I feel like that's quoted from time to time. Tzaddik is the foundation of the world. What is that? Just forget our pasuk for a second. What does it mean to you that the tzaddik is the foundation of the world?
Provides a moral standard.
Can you elaborate on that? I agree with it, but that could mean a lot of things.
As in, if you're not doing the right thing and you see someone, like, let's say to use a real life example, let's say you're sitting on a couch and someone gets up to do something, and you're sitting on the couch and really want to sit on the couch, but that other person actually started doing something. You can't really tell yourself, well, I don't need to get up and do that thing, because the other person was in the exact same situation, was able to do it. So there's no good reason for why you're sitting there.
Okay. A little complicated example, but I get a better idea what you mean when you say moral standard now. Anyone else want to add to this? Especially based, sorry, anyone? So what I understand this to mean, and this is why I wasn't sure, Brooke, what you meant when you said a moral standard, is like, okay, Ariel kept on using the word systems, right? So our approach to Tzaddik and Russia that we've developed through the course of this chapter 10 is basically that there are natural systems, meaning that there are, let's talk about people, right? People have needs, and these are objective needs, like they're based on the way that we're designed, and there are efficient, beneficial ways to make sure that everyone gets all the resources that they need in the way that they get them to take care of their needs. And then there are ways that are not like that. And a tzaddik is someone who is going to strive to figure out, to understand what that system is, and to facilitate its success, you know? So maybe it helps to think of an ecosystem, if human beings are too complicated for you, is that in an ecosystem, each creature and each plant or whatever has its own needs, but they all function harmoniously. And that is a really existing thing. That is objectively, it's in the design of these creations. So same thing with human beings, is that we have needs, and that there are laws and principles we can follow that would produce a harmonious state where everyone is getting the maximum good, you know? And a tzaddik, so what does it mean tzaddik is the foundation of the world? Is the tzaddik basically is the I don't want to reduce him to a cog, but he's the ultimate, well, maybe he's not a cog, he's the ultimate facilitator of that reality, you know, is that's his whole existence, is to bring that about using all of his resources and abilities. So the tzaddik is very, I don't know how to say this, the tzaddik is like very close to the ground in that sense, that he is, that's a bad way to say it. The tzaddik always has his eye and his mind on what the needs are and how he can respond to those needs in himself and in other people in a way that takes maximum care of them. So it's going to be very hard for him to falter, because he's attaching himself to something real, which is contributing to the ultimate success of the system around him, which is a what's the opposite of a vicious cycle? A virtuous cycle, right? It like sustains him, which sustains the people around him, which sustains him. So that's why it all works out. But the Russia is the opposite. Like Ariel, mentioned with the Russia is really trying to oppose the system for his own power and greatness as an individual, and is operating under this delusion that like I can actually do this without undermining my whole existence. In reality, though, if you are and use the biggest example of a dictator who is completely like using up all the resources and antagonizing everybody and wielding power in a way that's clearly for his own satisfaction, so that can't sustain itself, so the tzaddik has a foundation because that's his identity. He's trying to understand what the underpinnings of reality are, of the system are, and aligning himself with it. So he's tapping into something real that is self-sustaining and self-nourishing. The Russia is doing the exact opposite, so it's destined to not last.
So question to understand is, I'm just trying to follow the logical structure. So how is this preventing him from faltering?
That's the part that I feel like I'm not expressing clearly. Give me 1 second. Let me just think of maybe a more localized example. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to look for an example within a closed system that is simple, that we can just talk about here. Yeah, Avi?
This might be kind of a dumb answer, but earlier you were talking about that pasuk about the lazy person.
Yeah.
And so could it be just that the definition of a tzaddik here is someone who either doesn't falter or does not falter forever?
That's going to be a reading thing. I don't know if that's going to. Oh, you meaning? No. Okay, I'll tell you why. It's good that you're saying it, but okay. The only way that what you're saying could be true is if we said that the subject of the pasuk is something where the definition of the tzaddik is not essential. Okay, in other words, the approach Ariel and I are both trying to take right now, and others are taking as well, is that this only works because of who the tzaddik is and because of who the Russia is. The tzaddik is the foundation of the world. The Russia is the opposit of that,
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's possible that an approach like you're saying could exist, but we don't have it yet.
Can I
together?
Yeah, what was that?
Piggyback off what you were saying, try to answer the question I was asking. So I'm just going to adjust it slightly, but I think I can answer the question. is if we say that it kind of reminded me of an explanation that actually I think you might have told me, but I'm not positive, for the quote from the Rambam about like what it means when like a tzaddik. I'm actually not really sure where I heard this, but so you can tell me. A tzaddik goes to a foreign land and like rests in the shade of a building, and then like the was this you?
It might have been. I mean, it was definitely the Rambam. You got that part right.
Okay, so far so good. So and he rests in the shade of that building, and basically the Rambam says that the purpose of that building was for that Sadiq to get some benefit from it. And one of the explanations I heard, and again, this I'm not sure where from, is that he's not saying that like this was a pre-planned thing all for this one moment in time, but rather that that there are certain actions that aren't necessarily embedded to be inherently good actions, but when a tzaddik makes use of it, it then gives purpose to that. Right. And so now this building existed for that tzaddik because he gave it purpose.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so here we could say that like
that's good.
The righteous people are the foundation of the world in the sense that they give it purpose. And so that is why we might even be able to say that they can't falter, is that it doesn't mean a technical falter. They can make mistakes and they can fail in isolation, so to speak, but their endeavors is what inherently gives purpose to the world.
Okay, that's a good explanation. Yeah, I'll Ariel, are you commenting on that also, or are you gonna say something else?
Well, I was gonna answer his question, just there's a different answer though.
Okay, hold on just a second. I just want to repeat that and make sure I understand it. Is that and it's funny because it's almost either the same thing that Brooke was saying or the exact opposite, which is what do you call it? The Sadiq is the standard that gives everything else meaning based on the way he interacts with it. Meaning that, let's say the Sadiq is involved in I lost my train of thought. Maybe you should say your thing, Ariel. I like the approach you're taking, Zach. I lost my train of thought in terms of how it's going to connect it to the second half of the pasuk.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry.
What was that?
Yeah, maybe you could say that to answer his question. You could say that I think a good example of this would be like, like giving tzedakah.
Yeah.
And imagine an entire society giving tzedakah.
Right.
Now the system of giving tzedakah is such that everyone can support people in need.
Yeah.
And that system of giving tzedakah is hard for a system like that to falter, because if you think about it, like everyone's at a certain point gonna have something to give over. It's almost, you'll never have a point where one person will be left in the dust.
Right.
Everyone gets tzedakah. So it's like that system lends itself, and it's almost like a natural consequence of no such falter.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And then let's look at, so that's a great example, and also is with the opposite is, let's say, this is a good example from the Lion King, right? Like, what did Scar do when he became king? He basically just stripped everyone and everything of all of his resources, and that can only last for so long before like he loses all food that sustains him, and then everyone loses all food that sustains them, and then the whole thing falls apart. So like the Tzadiq is operating in a way where he is furthering the self-perpetuating nature of systems when they're healthy, and the Russia is like stopping up by ignoring like the nature of the system. Then he's like plugging up the pipelines through which all the good would naturally flow.
So is this saying that, just to understand, are you guys saying that because of this, because the tzaddik in this case is bolstering the system by being the foundation, the system will then prevent him from faltering?
That's what I'm not sure what we're saying. I don't know the not faltering part. Yeah. And I'm also, I don't even, Ariel, you have a.
Well, want to say that it's not really like, it's really that the system is like so pure that it's like, it's impossible to have defects. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like
the system itself, yeah. I mean, because
the individual himself can have falters in someplace else in his life, but like if he really, really analyzes a certain, context in any area, and if he spends so much time and energy and research and whatever, and he found a great solution, and if it's a proven model and system to work,
yeah,
then like it's almost impossible to find any mistakes in it.
Yeah, but so are we reading the word in the first half in a way that makes sense, that he will not falter or he will not slip or turn?
I know I am. How are you reading it?
So how are you reading it?
I'm reading that a tzaddik will never shake, totter, whatever, and a wicked will not dwell in the land.
No, but how I understand you're saying the system itself is perfect. So what does it mean that the tzaddik will not emote?
I mean, his application to a certain area where he, has knowledge in helping people. I don't know. Like, maybe I'm not really understanding the question. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not understanding how to read the idea. All right, let me just do this one thing. I have a completely different approach, which I think will work out. Okay. And it doesn't have anything to do with what we've been talking about until now. Okay. I'm going to go with this notion. Let's just, a lot of Mepharshim say this. Let's say, like, look at Metzudas David. Okay. Let's look at Rashi. Rashi says, Tzadiq le'olam yibal yimot, kishu mat, when he does falter or stumble or whatever, mitas olam, his faltering is not forever, ki yipol b'kam, he'll fall down and he'll get up. Okay. And there are a lot of Mepharshim who quote another pasuk in Mishlei, which says, Kisheva, where is it? There's a pasuk, famous people quote this a lot, that the tzaddik falls 7 times and gets up, but the rasha falls forever, So let me show you, I'm going to get this approach from the Ibn Ezra on Tehillim, which ironically I quoted this morning. Maybe that's why I'm thinking about it. So in Tehillim, the Ibn Ezra gives in Tehillim chapter 1, Ibn Ezra gives a radical definition of what a rasha is. We think of a rasha as someone who's evil, okay? And Ibn Ezra, he may be not disagreeing with that, but this is his definition here. And I'm just quoting from my blog post because I translated it here. He says, according to my opinion, the word reshaim refers to people who are in a constant state of flux, of like change, or and then look at the pasuk he quotes. He says, in the sense of the reshaim are like the troubled sea, incapable of rest, and uses the word rasha there. Okay. Likewise, wherever he turned himself, he unsettled them. Yarshia. That's in Shmuel Aleph. He grants quietude, and who can agitate? Yarshia. Fine. So I said, according to Ibn Ezra, rasha does not mean evil, but rather troubled, unsettled, agitated, restless, and inconsistent. So I'm not going to read this whole post, but the definition I pulled out of here was, according to Ibn Ezra, rasha refers to a person whose actions are I don't even need to go there. Rasha just means someone who is agitated or in a state of flux. Let's just use Ibn Ezra's words in general. Okay, so based on that, and maybe this is similar to Ariel's first approach, here's how I want to read the pasuk. Okay, a tzaddik will not falter means will not falter forever. So what does that mean? A tzaddik will stumble because he's human. Okay, everyone has emotions. Everyone has can get thrown off based on emotions that are awakened by the circumstances or whatever. But because the tzaddik has values that are based on tzedek and on chachma, so then he will return to them. He has this set of values. The rasha, though, is basically does not have a consistent set of values. He basically will be drawn to whatever emotionally supports his power struggle or his desire for power in the moment. Which is how you can have like dictators. You follow the trajectories of certain dictators. I don't know. I don't know that much about this person. What I'm going to say, but like Mao Zedong was a leftist, who was rebelling against the status quo, and then he became the one who made China into a like a totalitarian type regime, so like, because both of them are suiting his power, in other words, there's no consistent system that the Russia is following. The Russia, or look at politicians, right? And I'm sure you could find people on the right and on the left. Like you could look at Obama, you could look at Trump. I don't really know Biden's politics, but like certainly the most recent example with Trump, right, is that people made a big deal about how before he ran for president, he had all these values, and then when he ran for president, he switched over to the Republican Party and like espoused those values. Whatever's going to work. And people accused certain Democrats of the same thing, of like flip-flopping on their values when it would be expedient for votes. So like the point is that the tzaddik, everyone falls, everyone stumbles, but the tzaddik will be able to return to his values, because in other words, the tzaddik will be able to return, will not fall forever, because he'll be able to return to his values. The Russia has no values to return to, and because they're just trying to do whatever they can do to establish and sustain their power, then they are going to be in a constant state of flux, because the ground is always shaking beneath them. When they're climbing on their way up, then there's one route to victory, but when they get to the top, now they have to be fearful of everyone who is like going to seek their power, or like when it's a constant state of conflict that the Russia is in. And that's why I liked whoever said, it was Matsu's Tion, they won't be settled tranquilly in the land, meaning they might establish themselves. There are definitely reshaim who establish themselves a lot, but they won't have that tranquility. And maybe, in other words, all right, let me try this one more time. The tzaddik, this is a common maneuver in Mishlei we do. You apply each half to the other half. So the tzaddik will not falter forever, and he will have tranquility. The Russia will not have tranquility, and when he falters, it will be forever. So how does that work out? So the tzaddik will falter, but not forever, because he has real values that his life is based on, tzedek and chachma, etc. And he will have tranquility from that, because his source of security is not things working out for him. And it's not even his own ability to stay perfect. It is the fact that he is attached to these values, these eternal values of truth, that he can constantly go back to, that he has established as something that is certain. The Russia has no values like that. So there's no foundation that he can rest on to give him tranquility. And when he falters, then it's going to be permanent, because that's the only part I haven't answered. But I feel like we've answered that a lot in previous pasukim and Mishlei. All right, what do you think? Is this making any sense?
Yeah, which part didn't you answer first?
Why the Russia, when he falls, he'll fall forever, or why he the opposite of the Sadiq.
I like the idea. The only part that like isn't totally clicking with me is the dwelling in the land aspect, relating to like this tranquil, like, I don't know, something like, I think the idea works, and I sort of don't think it totally doesn't fit the pasuk, but it doesn't click with me on that.
It's weird that it says land, right? Is that the part, the emphasis on the, if it just said dwelling securely, I think it would work out fine, right? Yeah, that is strange. Yeah.
Maybe an answer to your question could be like, the reason why the Russia will fall forever is because he's extremely egocentric about it. Like it'll be difficult for him to recover because of his nature.
Right. So this is the thing that is also bothering me about the pasuk, which is there are lots of qualities of the Russia, and I feel like this should all boil down to the one quality makes him falter and fall forever and not dwell securely. So if you could join the ego thing to this, then that'd be good. But we haven't had to bring in the Russia's ego thing yet. Like it seems like we're talking about a different quality of his.
Wait, also about what you and Zach were just saying, can we say that like that? I feel like the chidush would have to depend on Aretz, because I feel like everything else that we're saying is very like that's Mishlei.
Right, but we have not talked about this point before with the tzaddik, that he that the thing that helps the tzaddik recover and not get thrown off is the fact that he has these eternal values that he's attached to. That to me is a significant point. Like, I'll give you an example of this. This is a really bad example. Or is it a bad example? Hold on.
So curious about the example though.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it. I don't even know if it's going to work out. I might just confuse things. Yeah, it's a difficult one. Let me just, in the interest of time, let me read the thing that that I was going to say that is like what Zach was saying. This is the Rabag. Okay, and we'll see if this helps us. Okay, Rabag says like this: Tzadiq l'olam bal yimot. So he says, due to the strength of God's hashgacha, his providence on the tzaddik, lo yimot leolam, he will not falter forever. Ratz lomar kol yamav, meaning for his entire days. So he's learning it as for the duration of his days, he will not falter. Okay, is that like any of our translations? Never. Whatever, he will, meaning for the remainder of his days, he will not falter. V'lo yamadu karsulav. I don't know if that's a typo. Okay, let's skip that for a second. Achis kayim b'makom shehu bo. He will be established in the place where he is, me'haaretz, on the earth. So he is attaching it to the earth thing. V'lo yigale misham l'makom acher. He will not be exiled from there to another place. V'ulam. Okay, now this is, I mean, here we have Ariel's question of, is this really true? You know, the tzaddik is there forever. I mean, which of the avos did not get exiled? Only Yitzchak, right? You know, v'ulam harushaim lo yishkenu aretz. The reshaim will not dwell tranquilly, or will not dwell in the land. Kim zman muad, only for a little while. Ki mipnei roa pu'ulosehem, because of the evil of their actions. Yihu lahem sonim rabim, they'll have many enemies. O yirtze ba'omro. Okay, so that's one interpretation. Okay, so what I find interesting about this one is he puts the hashgacha in the first half about the tzaddik, and just says the tzaddik will never be exiled. But then for the Russia, he says it's the natural consequences of the fact that they're making many enemies. Any thoughts on that, Zach?
Intriguing.
Yeah. And it's funny because he doesn't really, oh, I guess the implication is they'll be driven out of the land. Right? See, okay, let me try this. I don't know whose idea this is like.
Wait, yeah? Sorry, just the thought caught up to me with what you're translating. I feel like that does match up to what we were saying before, meaning like it like the success of the tzaddik will be related to hashgacha, and the downfall of Russia will just be that he doesn't have hashgacha. So eventually, that luck will run out.
Okay, so can we let's just take the move that you're saying with the hashgacha from before, and apply it to a system. Okay, and let's use the example of a company. Okay, if you're the CEO of a company, okay, and you care for all, you're doing a good job, and you care for all your employees, and you're taking care of all their needs, they will not oust you, and there will be a perpetual, like, you'll just stay put and continue to succeed. Okay, like again in this muscle here, right? Because everything is going, you're doing it right. But the Russia, who's abusing the system and making enemies, is going to get ousted.
It sounds more like Ariel's.
Yeah, it does sound like what Ariel's saying, right? But I'm saying that this could be the way that we were talking about with the hashgacha for you, that the tzaddik is, again, not the Eretz Yisrael thing, but the fact that the tzaddik is aligning himself with God's will as is embedded in the systems of nature, you know, or the systems of human psychology, the systems of whatever. And therefore, there's nothing that is going to move him out of this place, because he is you know, attached to that source, you know. And the Russia is the opposite, is he'll get kicked out. This now, Rifki, I feel like is subject to your criticism of what's the chidush. Man, this is a difficult one.
So I feel like I might be able to combine this with the idea we started building off of your thought where I mentioned the Rambam and
sure.
So I just try to think out loud a moment. I still haven't the pieces together. So just to recap what we were saying before is that a tzaddik is a foundation to the world in the sense that he gives meaning to the world. So even if he fails in a individual manner, he's still giving that foundation to the world. So in that sense, he's not faltering.
Right.
And so then the opposite of that would be someone who's sort of say, I'd say it has to be more than not giving meaning, but maybe like waste, meaning like if a Russia, just let's keep it really simple with an apple. If a Tzadiq eats an apple and does a good deed, he gave meaning to that apple. But if Russia eats it, he's kind of wasting it if he goes and like uses that energy to kill someone or whatever, you know. So like that waste is like the antithesis of meaning. And so now if we kind of blend it with what we're just talking about with like certain natural consequences, for the Russia, as he's like bleaching out the meaning of things around him, that will inevitably create lots of enemies. It will inevitably create a unwelcoming host in his surroundings. So he'll find it difficult to dwell there in the long run. Right. Okay. I feel like that's really well said. So could we just, all right, could we unify this? I know that's what you just tried to do, but I want to be able to state the idea in like one sentence. So a tzaddik gives meaning to the world. But I want to, sorry, just to clarify, I want it to come from the pasuk. So if you could read the pasuk in a way that shows how the idea flows from the pasuk, that would make my night. Tall order. Anyone can do it, by the way, if they're picking up on the same track. The tzaddik will never slip because the meaning he gives to the world is stable, and the wicked will not dwell in the land because by sucking out the meaning of things around him, he creates a unwelcoming host wherever he will. Okay, that's very good. Can we just modify what we mean by meaning? I feel like that I'm still not. I was jumping on the foundation idea for meaning. Yeah. On the foundation idea, right. I mean, happy to try to focus that in, but what's bothering you? What's bothering me is that feels like, let me just say it and maybe I'll be able to detect what's bothering me. So the Sadiq is using the world for what it was intended for and relating to the world based on how it was designed to work. So with the apple example, right? He's eating an apple to get sustenance in order to be able to involve himself in knowledge and righteousness. The Russia is eating the apple so that he can get energy to go and like, seek power or beat up on someone or whatever, you know? So that I understand. That's what you meant by meaning, right? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So the Sadiq will never falter, means that whatever he's doing in the world will be a fulfillment of those values. So if he is involved in something that's succeeding, certainly. But even when he fails, if he's using that, let's say, to gain insight into doing tשובה or to correct something in society or whatever, you know, it's all going to be contributing to that goal. So he really cannot fail. You know, it's like I always saying when it comes to like doing experiments in your personal growth, that you can't fail by definition, because as long as you're using it to further your growth, then it's a success. The Russia, though, is not like that. So he can. So this is where, okay, maybe this is the thing. I understand that he's not dwelling on the earth because he's making enemies. And I understand that he's relating to things contrary to the way that they were designed. But I can't get that last. So what is the point that the pasuk is making about the Russia? That it's saying that because he's not relating to things as they were intended, then that will result in consequences that drive him out of the land. Is that? Still feel, I don't know what it is. It feels like the two ideas are not connecting, or the two halves are not. Can I try something? Yeah, please do.
Maybe this is kind of what I was saying before, so it totally might not work at all.
Yeah, we've totally drifted in that direction, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe he won't dwell in the land is he won't dwell in reality.
Mm-hmm. He won't dwell in reality.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds nice. Do we ever use land as reality?
No, but like, it's like the way of the land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not talking about It's not talking about like the land.
Right.
It's talking about land.
He won't be grounded, as we say, right? Like
Right.
grounded in reality. Yeah. Yeah. There's oh yeah. I mean, okay, hold on a second here. Oh no, he didn't say this. Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. Well, yeah.
Maybe we could blend it a little bit with that setting the standard concept a little.
Yeah.
By saying, like, if you just think about a community and like someone, if you have a tzaddik, I don't know why this example comes to mind, but like someone writes a get well card for someone, and then like offers people to sign it, and everybody wants to jump on board to sign their name when it was this one guy who went and got and wrote the card. So it's like when a tzaddik is in the land and he's giving everything meaning and purpose, everybody wants to help foster that, help him do that. But if you have someone who's doing the opposite and like sort of say selfishly sucking out the meaning of things, then the opposite occurs and everybody's not as enthusiastic about helping them, and maybe the opposite occurs, you know?
Yeah. Okay, here's what's bothering me. Okay, that helped me identify what's bothering me. The Sadiq not faltering, it puts the emphasis on his own failures. Like when he makes a mistake or when he slips up, then it's not forever, you know, or he can't by definition slip up. The second half of the pasuk focuses on the impact or the ability of the Russia to be to have a stable existence in society or successful existence in society. To me, those still feel like two separate ideas or two separate themes.
Can I try again?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going back to my idea.
Okay, yep, just gotta whittle it down. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're saying that the tzaddik like won't have an issue, but for Russia, he's not even in there. It's like he's not even in like the same realm of making mistakes. Like he doesn't even have that option.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Right. Meaning the tzaddik is on the implication that the tzaddik is dwelling in the earth, and even when he trips, it won't be bad. But the Russia is not tripping because he's not in reality. He's completely, yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's interesting. See, that's the type of unity that I'm seeking. Now, is this a good idea? And again, like it's just one example. It's hard not to use Hitler as an example of a Russia. I mean, obviously we should, but like I'm kind of loath to do it because it's an extreme example. But like, again, by the end, Hitler was making completely irrational militarily strategic moves and commanding troops that didn't exist, you know, and so like that's an example of the like his successes and his defeats are completely not in reality; they're in his own head, you know. Whereas the tzaddik is very grounded in reality, and then when he trips up by someone else's standards, that is a kiyum in his attachment to reality. Yeah, Oren.
Yeah, you can also, it's kind of a double entendre because it's saying that the Russia is not in the land, and also the Russia is not, he's not going to falter like in the way that the Sadiq is, because he has nothing to trip on. He's not in land.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, you can't you can't fail if you're not playing the game. You know? Yeah. All right, this unity is good. And I think it's not a person could walk away from this year thinking that we've gone over many half-baked approaches. It's all one approach. The question is how to read the pasuk. That's really the difficulty here. But all of these revolve around the same ideas, that the tzaddik is living his life based on real values. Those values are beneficial for him and for the society. You know, it endows everything with correct meaning, and it makes it so that when he trips up, it's not a failure. You know, it is, and he can recover. You know, all of these things stem from who the tzaddik is. And then the Russia is really the opposite, is he's not living in reality. He's not attached to a system that's real. The system he is trying to impose on people is self-destructive. And the phenomenon of tripping the way that the tzaddik does is completely unavailable to him because he's not even in reality in that sense. Okay. I think it'd be good if we stopped here for tonight. I know there's more we can explore, but I think I'm at the end of my I think I've run out of steam, especially with this this puzzle. I really want to try it. You know, it's last week also. You know, the one thing we didn't get a chance to go to, Rabbeinu Yonah combines the two psukim, and I kind of wanted to take that up and see if that would help us, because again, clearly all the other Mefarshim don't, but if you held, maybe the reason why it feels like a half of an idea or an incomplete subject is because we haven't tried to like, is because maybe Rabbeinu Yonah is right that the two go together, but I don't know. Okay, well, at the very least, we got a nice.
That.
Say again.
You're gonna leave us dingling with that.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, yeah. Look, you can read the video on your own. I just want to say, because not everyone was here when we were when I said it at first. If you can include Rabbi Moskowitz in your tefillos, Meir ben Esther Malka, then it would be much appreciated. And the situation has gone from dire to less dire. So it's not a good situation. He is stable as of right 2 minutes before Shiur. Then Mrs. Moskowitz said that he is in stable condition, moving from the ICU into a room. So that's good. He's no longer in the ICU. But yeah, not a good situation. So I'd appreciate that. And yeah, I'll think about, we have 2 more pasukim in this perek, and then we'll decide, maybe we'll do a radical move to one of the prakim after 25 and get more of a variety of pasukim instead of just doing Sadiq and Russia every time. I'm a little tired of that.
What are those prakim about?
Lots of different things. I mean, I think either 25 or 26 is about the ksil, and it's a deep dive into the ksil, the fool, which I think would be a good way to break from the Russia and the Tzadiq thing and talk about the fool and the chacham for a while. Yeah.
Well, what perek are we doing in the mornings again?
In the morning, we're doing 20.
Is it similar to 20?
No,
or?
because 25 was not written by Shlomo. 25 through 29 was not written by Shlomo. The ideas are from Shlomo, but it was written by Anshe Chizkiyahu, and the style is completely different. It feels like a different. It has a different feel to it. We could try it out and see what happens.
Is it the same methodology?
Same methodology, yeah. It's just the way I would characterize the difference is a lot of them are more just straight up mashalim, and they don't have the Rubik's Cube elements to it. It feels more like a riddle than a Rubik's Cube. That's how I would put it. By Rubik's Cube, I mean like, what I mean, like you move one part and then the other part doesn't work out, and like you do this, but then we can't explain erets, and you do volume mode, but then, the other one feels much more like riddles.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. That's how I think of it. I don't know.
Interesting.
Okay, thank you, and we'll see you next week if God willing. Yeah. All right, bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.